Imagine a place where the sky is a hell of fire and the winds can reach 400 kilometers per hour. What if Venus were humanity's new home? Get ready to uncover the mysteries and deadly dangers of this hellish planet. Have you ever stopped to think about where humanity could go if Earth were no longer an option? Imagine a distant planet with conditions so extreme they would be comparable to a nightmare. Temperatures nearing 500 degrees Celsius, an impenetrable and acidic atmosphere, and winds so strong they could tear apart any structure we attempted to build. Venus, a planet so close to Earth and yet so lethal, has fascinated scientists and space explorers for decades. But what if somehow Venus became our only refuge? What if it was there that humanity needed to survive? What would happen if, in some distant future, this hell of fire and toxic gases became our new home? The idea of colonizing Venus may seem absurd, but the truth is that when looking at the cosmos, many of the alternatives seem equally impossible. With the conditions we know, Venus is a wild, inhospitable and unforgiving world. But imagine for a moment that Earth could no longer sustain human life. What would we do? Would we look to the planets around us in search of a chance, an opportunity? What if Venus were our last hope? But how could we live in a place where the air is deadly, where the atmospheric pressure would crush any human in seconds, and where the rain is made of sulfuric acid? Could science and technology find a way to save humanity? Somehow, would we manage to survive and even thrive on a planet where death awaits us at every corner? What if, in some way, Earth were destroyed and Venus became our only destination? Imagine the difficulties humanity would face during the first expeditions when trying to adapt to such a hostile environment. How would it be possible to build a home on a planet where life, as we know it, simply cannot exist? Venus is a world of extremes. In its hellish skies, the temperatures are so high that even spacecraft have trouble surviving. Its atmosphere, almost entirely composed of carbon dioxide, is dense and suffocating, blocking sunlight from reaching the surface, and the radiation emitted by the planet itself could eliminate any attempt at human life in minutes. The big question is, would it be possible to reverse the conditions on Venus so that it became habitable for humans? What if one day technology reached such an advanced level that we could transform this hell into a new home? What would be necessary to withstand its deadly forces? Could we build a new home on Venus, or would we simply be awaiting our extinction instead? What could we learn from the hidden secrets of this planet? Science is already studying ways to transform inhospitable planets, like Mars, into viable places to live. But Venus is another level. It would take more than just advanced technology. It would take a miracle to make it habitable. And what else could be hidden in the sulfuric acid clouds that cover Venus? Perhaps some cosmic secret that we haven't yet understood. Maybe if we manage to survive there, we'll discover that Venus has something more to offer, something we've never imagined until now. Now get ready to explore what would happen if humanity decided to go to Venus. How would our survival be possible in such a lethal environment? What would be the greatest challenges we would face? How would we turn this hell into a home? Don't leave this video, because what's coming next will surprise and impact you. And to make sure you won't miss any of the upcoming mysteries about our fate in space, like this video now, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated on everything. Imagine a distant future where humanity is forced to abandon Earth due to environmental catastrophes or a complete collapse of the planet. The options for a new home in space are limited, but one of the closest planets, Venus, emerges as a possibility. The idea of colonizing Venus may seem intriguing at first, but upon closer inspection, we see that the planet is a true hell and not exactly a new home. With an average temperature of around 465 degrees Celsius, Venus is one of the hottest planets in the solar system. To put it into perspective, this is hotter than the surface of Mercury, which is closer to the Sun. This extreme heat is enough to melt lead, and any attempt to explore the surface would result in immediate failure. Venus has a dense atmosphere, mostly composed of carbon dioxide, which creates an uncontrollable greenhouse effect, making the heat unbearable. Additionally, the atmosphere contains clouds of sulfuric acid, making breathing and survival even more impossible. When we look at the atmospheric pressure, the situation gets even worse. Venus has a pressure 92 times greater than Earth's, which is equivalent to being 900 meters below sea level. This would crush any human exposed directly to the surface, making any attempt at exploration or colonization even riskier. The only way a human could survive on Venus would be in spacecraft or space stations capable of withstanding these extreme conditions. Scientists also consider the idea of terraforming Venus to make it habitable. This would involve massive changes to the atmosphere and temperature. Some theories suggest that we could use gigantic solar mirrors to reduce the heat or even create a more life-friendly atmosphere. But these projects are still far from becoming a reality. Furthermore, terraforming Venus wouldn't solve all the problems, such as the extreme radiation the planet emits or the lack of potable water, an essential resource for any human colonization. Even if terraforming were possible, the challenges would be immense. It would require incredibly advanced technology, something beyond our current capabilities. Therefore, the question remains, would it ever be possible to live on Venus? Or does the planet remain a reminder of our limitations in the face of the cosmos? What can we learn from such an inhospitable world and the challenges it imposes? How can science help us achieve the impossible, or at least explore the mysteries that Venus still hides? When we think about the possibility of living on Venus, it's impossible not to confront the extreme conditions of this planet. To survive in an environment where the average temperature hovers around 465 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead, the technology would have to be absolutely advanced. It's not just the heat that's a problem. The atmospheric pressure, 92 times that of Earth, would crush any human without the proper technological reinforcement. Can you imagine the complexity of that? We would have to develop powerful thermal shields capable of blocking not only the extreme heat, but also the radiation emanating from Venus's surface. These shields would need to be made of materials highly resistant to both heat and pressure, materials that are still unavailable with the technology we have today. Additionally, the idea of building habitats on Venus calls for a radical innovation. Perhaps like in science fiction movies, the solution could be underground shelters. These shelters would act as a kind of bunker to protect us from the crushing pressure and intense heat. But is human engineering capable of creating something so advanced? To withstand the violent winds of up to 400 kilometers per hour and sulfuric acid rain, these structures would need to be nearly indestructible, a combination of science and fiction to ensure our survival. The question that arises then is it possible to create a colony on Venus? Or are we still far from developing the technology needed for that? Venus, with its monstrous challenges, makes us wonder, what if we found a way to live there? Would it be possible to live on a planet where death is a certainty for most living beings, but where humanity could, with the right technologies, find a new home? This is the big question. To what extent can our technological capabilities overcome the natural limits of this planet? How can we turn a hell into a place where we could somehow survive and thrive? Leave your comment below, because this question could define the future of humanity. Do you think that one day we could overcome the challenges of Venus? Is technology on its way to making this possible, or are we still far from it? Venus, the second planet closest to the Sun, is often described as an impossible world to colonize, and it's not hard to understand why. To begin with, the lack of liquid water is one of the greatest obstacles to any form of human life. On Earth, water is essential for our survival, and without it we can't even begin to think about building a colony. Venus, on the other hand, offers no natural resources that could be used to sustain a human population. What we have there are thick layers of sulfuric acid clouds, along with an atmosphere almost entirely composed of carbon dioxide. This creates an environment where any attempt to grow food or produce water would be a complete failure. To make the situation even worse, the solar radiation reaching Venus is extremely intense. The thin layer of clouds covering the planet can filter out some visible light, but it does not prevent ultraviolet radiation and high-energy solar radiation from reaching the surface. This means that any structure we attempt to build would be constantly bombarded by lethal radiation, weakening its materials and making any construction vulnerable to collapse. Now, imagine trying to build shelter in a place where the air is filled with poisonous gases and radiation is directly hitting you. This is even more problematic because Venus's surface is constantly hit by sulfuric acid storms. These acids quickly corrode any exposed material, making the construction and maintenance of any structure an almost impossible challenge. So the question is, would you really want to live in a place where leaving your shelter means being consumed by a deadly storm or being destroyed by unbearable heat? The average temperature on Venus is about 465 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense it melts lead, something that makes any kind of human housing or structure vulnerable, and within minutes, fatal. Even if we could find a way to escape the heat, the solar radiation and the constant acid rain would certainly cause irreparable damage. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, Venus's relentless nature keeps us in a position of constant vulnerability. But what if somehow we could overcome these obstacles and create an artificial environment that could sustain human life? Is colonizing Venus a possibility, or are we, in reality, trying to accomplish the impossible? Can science lead us to a solution for all these challenges, or will Venus always remain an uninhabitable place? The mystery that Venus represents to science is fascinating. The idea of life on such a hostile and inhospitable planet is hard to believe, but the theories that arise about the possibility of microbial life in Venus's clouds are intriguing. In recent years, scientists have started to explore this possibility more deeply, especially after some discoveries that indicated the presence of phosphine, a gas that, on Earth, is produced by living organisms. While the presence of phosphine on Venus is not concrete proof of life, it raises a question. Could some form of life exist in such an extreme environment? The clouds of Venus are about 50 kilometers above the surface, where the pressure and temperature are milder, though still extreme, with temperatures around 65 degrees Celsius, much milder than the 465 degrees Celsius on the surface. The conditions in this region are extremely acidic, with a high concentration of sulfuric acid. But even so, this discovery has sparked a new field of study that challenges our ideas about where life could exist. The question is, could in some way a form of microbial life adapt to such extreme conditions? Could we be observing the evolution of a life form completely different from anything we know, with bizarre and unknown adaptations? The idea of microbial life on Venus is not a completely new theory. Since the 1960s, some scientists have suggested that there could be some form of life in Venus's clouds, but the evidence was scarce and the idea was largely dismissed. However, the recent discoveries about phosphine have reignited this discussion. Although phosphine can also be generated by non-biological processes, the amount observed is surprisingly large for a planet so far from Earth. This raises the possibility that something unknown, perhaps a life form with biochemical processes completely different from ours, might be thriving in Venus's clouds. Now imagine for a moment, what if life really is there, but in a form so alien that our limited senses can't detect it? Could it be that in some way life is evolving under our limited view, without us being able to perceive it? Perhaps the biology and chemistry of Venus follow completely different rules from Earth's, and that's what prevents us from understanding what's happening there. The real question that arises then is, are we really ready to understand life in other conditions, or are we stuck with our narrow view of how life should behave? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Do you believe that life could be evolving on Venus in a way we still cannot comprehend? Or even with the discoveries of phosphine, is Venus still an uninhabitable world for any living being? Venus, despite being often described as an inhospitable and lethal planet, has characteristics that may surprise. One of them is its gravity, which is quite similar to Earth's. Venus has about 95% of Earth's gravity, meaning that if we were there, our weight would only be slightly higher. In theory, this could make physical adaptation a little easier compared to other planets like Mars, where the gravity is only about 38% of Earth's. However, this gravity similarity is where the similarities end. The density of Venus's atmosphere is incomparable to Earth's. It is extremely dense, with the atmospheric pressure at the surface being 92 times greater than Earth's, equivalent to being 900 meters below sea level. This means the pressure would be overwhelming for any human without proper protection. The human body, accustomed to normal atmospheric pressure, would suffer severe damage in a matter of minutes. In such an environment, any attempt to breathe the dense and poisonous air of Venus would be impossible, and the crushing pressure would cause our organs to collapse in the blink of an eye. The combination of relatively high gravity with extreme pressure creates a physical paradox. The human body is not prepared to cope with such conditions, and any attempt to explore the surface of Venus without a pressurized shelter would be a death sentence. And of course, the heat doesn't help at all. The average temperature on Venus is 465 degrees Celsius, much hotter than the surface of Mercury, which is closer to the Sun. This heat, combined with the pressure and the density of the air, would make survival on Venus even more impossible, How would the human body react to the constant heat and pressure? Sweat, for example, wouldn't work to regulate temperature, since Venus's air doesn't allow proper evaporation. Additionally, the heat would be so intense that our cells and organs would start to deteriorate rapidly, and the sensation of being in an environment with this constant heat, with no ability to escape, would be physically and psychologically unbearable. This leads us to a big question. Would our body be able to withstand the burden of Venus? Or would we be doomed to live in isolated capsules forever, with no chance of experiencing the freedom to explore this planet? Is it possible that technology and human engineering could create habitats that protect us from all these factors? Or would we be limited to living under artificial conditions, never feeling the sensation of wind, mild temperatures, or even the freedom to walk on a new planet? With current technology, could we one day create a shelter that could withstand all these conditions? Or would we live in isolated capsules forever, far from the true experience of inhabiting a new world? The idea of colonizing Venus, a planet that today seems like a deadly hell, has always been seen as a distant possibility, something out of science fiction. However, with the advancement of space technologies and research into terraforming, this idea has started to be considered by some scientists as a plausible option, although full of challenges. Terraforming Venus would be a monumental task, as to make it habitable, we would need to alter its atmosphere, reduce the extreme temperature, and create conditions that would allow human life to survive. But how do you transform a planet with an average temperature of 465 degrees Celsius into a place where humans could live? The first major issue is the composition of Venus's atmosphere, which is almost entirely made up of carbon dioxide, a gas that is extremely toxic to humans. To begin the terraforming process, it would be necessary to remove this carbon dioxide on a colossal scale, something that would require technologies we don't yet have. Furthermore, it would be necessary to control the uncontrollable greenhouse effect already occurring on Venus, which traps heat and prevents solar radiation from escaping. Some scientists suggest that it could be possible to use giant solar mirrors or other technologies to reflect some of the sunlight and reduce the planet's temperature. This could, theoretically, begin to moderate the unbearable surface heat. But the challenge doesn't end there. Venus has an atmospheric pressure 92 times greater than Earth's, which would make it impossible for any human to survive without a pressurized shelter and advanced technologies. To withstand the pressure and intense radiation, any structure we would build on Venus would need to be immensely strong and resistant, and even then, it would still be extremely difficult to maintain such habitats for long periods. And even if these barriers were overcome, the fact that Venus lacks liquid water and its soil is hostile to life makes the idea of colonization even more complicated. We would need to find a way to generate water and grow food on a planet without enough natural resources to sustain human life. But is it possible to terraform Venus in a way that could sustain human life in the long term? Even with the most advanced technologies, the cost of this transformation would be immense, and perhaps we still don't have the necessary tools to overcome all the obstacles Venus imposes. Terraforming Venus would require resources, time, and scientific innovation beyond what we can imagine. But maybe one day, we could make Venus our home, although at a terrible cost, a constant struggle against an unforgiving planet. Or perhaps we will never escape the horrors it holds for us, like the immense pressure, radiation, and unbearable heat that make any attempt at colonization a mortal risk. Will humanity ever be able to transform Venus into a new home? Or will it remain an impossible dream? What do you think? Leave your comment below. Do you believe that terraforming Venus is a possibility in the future? Or do you think we will never be able to overcome the challenges it imposes? Let's talk about it. As we explore the extreme conditions of Venus, it's impossible not to ask ourselves, what if this planet, with its suffocating atmosphere and deadly radiation, were our last hope? A place where the average temperature hovers around 465 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of Mercury, and where the atmospheric pressure is 92 times greater than Earth's. All of this seems insurmountable, but it's exactly this type of challenge that could shape the future of our species. Venus, with its winds of up to 400 kilometers per hour and its acid storms, seems like the last place humanity could survive, yet it offers a fascinating mystery. Somehow it holds the potential to teach us fundamental lessons about the limits of our technology and the limits of life in extreme environments. Terraforming Venus although it seems like a distant dream, is a possibility that continues to be discussed, and who knows what the future holds for us. Will we one day be able to transform Venus, with all its threats, into a new home? Perhaps science, as it has in so many other areas, will be able to overcome the physical and technological barriers that now seem impossible. But at the same time, we must face the possibility that Venus will remain a deadly planet, a reminder of how limited we are in the face of the cosmos. Have you ever imagined such an inhospitable place, but at the same time with so much potential to change the future of our species? Could this planet, which seems impossible to inhabit, hold the key to our survival? What do you think? Comment below. Now that you've just explored the incredible challenges of Venus and what would be needed to colonize it, it's clear how fascinating and complex the future of humanity could be, isn't it? The content you just saw opens up a new perspective on our destiny in space, and I'm sure you're thinking about how all this could one day become reality. Write Venus in the comments to let us know you made it this far, and to be the first to know about the next incredible discoveries that are coming, and to help spread this knowledge about the mysteries of the cosmos to even more people. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. And in the next video that will appear on your screen, we'll dive into a scenario that will challenge everything you know about human survival. Get ready to discover a possibility that could change the future of our species in a way you never imagined. So stay tuned, you can't miss it. What's coming next will impact you deeply. See you in the next video.